Phase 3 of Season of Discovery is here, and I'm going to show you how to hit the ground running as a Mage Healer. Starting off with the stat priority, we are going to want generic spell power. This is actually going to affect our direct healing spells, as well as the damage spells we're going to be turning into healing as well, hence why it is so powerful. After that, you can get some spell or arcane damage. That's going to be also fine. And then after that, we're going to want to get our spell hit to 5%. The reason 5% is needed is because that is what we need for Sunken Temple. They are 2 levels above us, and therefore 5% is what we are going to need on that basis. Now, you're not really going to need much of this from the gear because it is mostly coming from the talents, so don't worry too much about it, but just so you know, it is the second top priority on our list. After that, we're going to want spell crit, obviously increasing the chance we can do double damage and therefore healing with our spells. Intellect coming after that, which actually is going to subsequently give us some crit rating, as well as mana as well, and then some spirit. Spirit, of course, increasing our mana regen, but not while casting, etc. We do have a talent called Arcane Meditation, allowing 5% of our mana to regenerate while casting, and therefore Spirit is still going to be useful for us in Phase 3 as a Mage Healer. So most of our talents are going to go into Arcane, as that is the predominant basis of our healing. Let's get started. 5 out of 5 going into Arcane Focus, reducing the chance that they're going to actually resist our spells, they being the enemy in the Sunken Temple, that's right. And then 2 out of 2 going into, what's this even called? Arcane Subtlety, which is going to reduce the target's resistance to our spells. And it's also going to reduce our threat as well, so that we don't pull aggro. Going down onto the next row, really important is Arcane Concentration. This is going to give us a chance to go into a clear casting state. A lot of classes actually have a clear casting state talent, and the word clear casting effectively means that the next spell you use is going to be free, completely mana free. It is reduced by 100% on the mana usage, and we've got a chance there at 10% with Arcane Concentration to go into that state. Going down one more, we're going to put one into Arcane Resilience, increasing the armor contribution we get from our intellect by 50%, which was 0 before, so we're now getting 50% of it by our intellect. 3 out of 3 going into Improved Arcane Explosion, increasing the crit chance of it by an additional 6%. That's a really good AoE spell. And 2 into Magic Attunement. This is going to increase the effect of our Amplify and Dampen Magic by 50%. And then 3 out of 3 into Arcane Meditation. This is the talent I spoke about when we were talking through the stats, about letting some of your spirit increase your mana regen while casting. This is the one. It's going to be 15% of mana regen while we are casting. That is still going to continue. Then we're going to put 5 out of 5 into Arcane Mind. Really straightforward, increases our mana by 10%. And then we're just going down these 3 here. Presence of Mind, 3-minute cooldown we've got here. When we activate this, our next spell is going to be Instant Cast. 3 out of 3 going into Arcane Instability, increasing our spell damage and crit by 3%. And last but not least is Arcane Power, another cooldown on 3 minutes. When activated, our spells are going to deal 30% more damage. However, they are going to cast at a 15% increased mana cost as well. So 30%. This is going to take us up to level 40. And of course, we do have, in Phase 3, another 10 talent points to use. We're actually going to put these into the Fire tree, which will make sense when we get there. So 5 out of 5 into Impact, giving our fire spells a 10% chance to stun the target. And then the really important one is 5 out of 5 into Ignite. Your critical strikes from fire damage are going to actually cause our target to burn for an additional 40%. And if you're thinking, well, we're not doing fire damage, you're wrong, because we are. This is mainly because of the new Phase 3 rune we're getting, Balefire Bolt. On that then, let's look at the runes we're taking. We're taking Arcane Blast on the hand rune, blasting the target, dealing damage. Every time you use Arcane Blast, the healing and damage of your other arcane spells will be increased by 15%, and that's going to stack up to 4 times. There's a caveat though, the mana cost of using Arcane Blast along with these stacks is going to increase exponentially at 175% per time. So it's going to increase your healing and damage of your other arcane spells every time you use it, stacking up to 4 times, but that does come with a huge increase in mana cost each time. When you then use a healing or damage spell, that's going to be reset. On the legs, we're going to go for Mass Regeneration, and this is where the healing part comes into this build. Mass Regen heals all of the target's party members within 30 yards of the player, and applies Temporal Beacon to each target for 15 seconds. What does Temporal Beacon then do? Records the target's space-time position. 80% of all arcane damage you do in this time will be converted to healing on each of the caster's current beacon targets. So basically, it's going to put a beacon on the target, and then any damage you do, if you've ever played a Disc Priest in retail, you'll understand how this works. It's then going to then turn that into healing on those targets. The healing is reduced by 50% on yourself, and also reduced by 80% when damage is done by arcane spells that damage multiple targets. So you can't get around it by doing a crazy amount of AoE damage to get insane healing out, basically. On the chest, we're then going to put on Regeneration, healing the target over 3 seconds, and again applies that Temporal Beacon. This is a single target version of the one we've just looked at, which is Mass Regen. Again, we've just explained what Temporal Beacon does. It's converting damage into healing on the targets with Temporal Beacon. On the waist, it's going to be Missile Barrage, giving your Arcane Blast a 40% chance, and your Fireball, Frostbolt, and Frost Firebolt, and Spell Frostbolt a 20% chance to reduce the channel duration of your next arcane missiles by 50%, reducing the mana cost by 100, and the missiles will fire every 0.5 seconds. On the feet, you've actually got two options. You can go for Chronostatic Preservation, which is going to be a really good single target heal if you can charge it up. So it's going to heal a friendly target and fuse Arcane Fire and Frost to freeze that energy into a stored state for later on. You can hold it then, or charge it up for 20 seconds before it combusts and expires. And then when that does combust or expire, it's going to unleash a ton more healing. It is considered Arcane Fire and Frost for interactions with other spells, etc, etc. You could also go for Spell Power, which is going to really simply increase the critical strike damage of your crits by 50%. So when they crit, it's going to do an extra 50% damage on top of the normal extra 100%. On the head, we're going to go for Temporal Anomaly, launching an Orb of Temporal Energy, which is going to slowly move, and every 2 seconds, it's actually going to grant everyone a shield, absorbing damage, which is a really fun addition to the Mage Healing arsenal. On the wrist, then, we're going to go for Bale Fire Bolt, and this is where I spoke about the fire talents before. It's going to do a big amount of damage, and this one also has a caveat. Every time you use it, it's going to increase the damage of the next one that you use by 10%, but it's also going to reduce your spirit by 10%. You can stack this up to 10 times. However, at 10 times, you'll die, so it reduces your spirit to 0. You want to stack it to 9 times so that you've reduced your spirit by 90% and are increasing the damage of your next Bale Firebolt by 90%. And then you want to let it go. It is going to last for 30 seconds, so you are going to have to wait for that to come off at the 9 stacks and not use it any further at that point. And that is basically all of the runes we're going to use. To tie it all off then, Bale Fire Bolt can do a really big amount of damage, which with Temporal Beacon is going to translate really well into a lot of healing. And outside of Temporal Beacon, we've finally got another way to heal, which is the Temporal Anomaly, which is going to give that shield, so that you've got a bit more flexibility in your healing arsenal. It's not all about Temporal Beacon, you've got that shield there to use as well. But how are we going to put it all together into an actual rotation? So starting off, for single target healing, of course we're going to want to be using Regeneration. You can use this on a tank or individuals that need spot healing to get that Temporal Beacon on them. And using Mass Regen to get Temporal Beacon onto large groups of allies, or mainly AoE raid healing. Because of the 20-second charge up on Chronostatic Preservation, you want to use this in advance of any large burst healing or emergency healing that you're going to need to be doing, and it is going to take a little bit of planning if you're using this rune. Then we can use our Temporal Anomaly. You can shoot this out towards maybe the melee or a large group of allies that are going to need shielding. It does really work a lot best if they're clumped up, like I said, in the melee, for example, because obviously you're firing it in a certain direction. So you do need to be a bit careful of how you're using that to maximize the healing you can get out of it, or shielding. Use your Arcane Power cooldown, remember, to get that extra damage out, and then use your Arcane Blast 2 times, and spend the charges of it on Arcane Missiles if you've had a Missile Barrage proc. Otherwise, we're going to be using Bale Fire Bolt, and Bale Fire Bolt is going to be the main bulk of the DPS, which we're going to be using to spam. Remember, you can use this up to 9 times in a row, getting an increasing amount of damage coming out of it each time, which is going to then translate into healing with your Temporal Beacons. But remember, don't use it a 10th time, because it will actually kill you. You need to wait for that buff to drop off before you can start ramping up with it again. So it's quite straightforward. I think it's actually getting a lot more fun in Phase 3 with the temporal anomaly and things like that. If you do have any questions around it, please do join my Discord. We've got a great community of friendly beginner and veteran players who are always there to help. And you can also think about joining my Patreon, which is also down below. One, to help my channel if you want, but also because I put a ton of behind the scenes content and it on there, including a blog, upcoming projects, etc., WoW spreadsheets, and also there's a VIP Patreon-only Discord channel where you can ask questions in the Discord, etc. as well, and I can help you out as much as I can. If you're looking for more SoD Phase 3 guides, check out my channel. You can see here there's a current guides shelf, and this will always include current guides for all versions of World of Warcraft, of course that currently being Phase 3 of SoD and the upcoming Dragonflight Season 4. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in Phase 3 of SoD.